We're going to be talking about something different today, unique deal structure. So I guess you guys tell me what it is.
Yeah, no, and there's so many different ways to do creative deal structure. To fit 5 or 6 different ideas into a 15, 20, 30-minute episode is almost impossible.
Yeah. Somebody doesn't just want to sell their property. They're trying to accomplish something by selling it, right?
Yes.
So the more you understand about what they're trying to accomplish, if you can get there a different way, then you can get that deal done.
Yeah, it goes back to, I swear we talk about this every time, but like goals. Like, what are you trying? What are you good at? And what do you want to do? And what is your goal?
Welcome back to REI Hot Seat. Andrew Hines with Jacob Campagnaro and David Hulshof again. Thanks, guys, for sticking around and doing this again. We're going to be talking about something different today, unique deal structure. So creative deal structure. I think we've talked a few different times about like getting real creative. We've done your typical VTB and that kind of thing, but now we're going to be talking about sort of, well I guess you guys tell me what it is.
Yeah, no, and there's so many different ways to do creative deal structure. I know I feel like every other week now there's an episode that comes out about creative deal structure.
Right.
But I really enjoy talking about it, and
that's what makes the job fun. Yeah.
And I think that's like there's to fit 5 or 6 different ideas into a 15, 20, 30-minute episode is almost impossible.
Yeah.
Because there's so much to each of these different structures. So I'll keep doing this for as long as you want.
Well, we were just talking off camera about how like it's the creativity of coming up with a solution. Like somebody doesn't just want to sell their property. They're trying to accomplish something by selling it, right? So the more you understand about what they're trying to accomplish, if you can get there a different way, then you can get that deal done. We were just talking off camera about what I'm looking at in Florida, where the guy kind of ran out of money. He's severing 7 lots and it's going to be worth a whole bunch of money, but he needs to pave a road and he doesn't have the money for it. Like I'm looking at it, I'm like, how can I JV with that guy? And I'll put up the money, we'll get it done, and I'll get profit out of that. So I think we're talking about something similar to that today, but who wants to take it and tell me what this is about?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I'll go high level. I know you just reviewed the deal, but building in downtown Toronto, right? And so historically, downtown Toronto has been a very unattainable market for newer investors, smaller investors, right? Capital requirements, always very difficult. Cash flow is difficult, right? You don't have those, you're not hitting those targets that you would in a small town Ontario. And so this one's interesting. So it came to us through a business partner of ours, and it is currently sitting at 9 units, 10 units, 10 units, stabilized. I believe there is vacancy there.
There is,
yeah. There's some good amount of vacancy, and this group is looking to convert 5 of the 2 bedrooms, because they're massive 2-bedroom units, and they're going to convert them into 1-beds. We've done market data studies there, and we've seen that adding the 1-beds makes more sense than trying to keep 5 2-beds. Right, because you're still retaining a good amount of 2s. You're going to add 1s, right, and you'll be able to refinance out. And I believe, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, 100% exit? Like, are you coming out with all your capital? Pretty darn close. It is.
So you're saying split the 2s into 2 1s?
Into 2 1s, yeah.
That's possible?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have the permit for it too.
So that's already permitted.
Yeah, permit's ready to go.
Finished.
Yeah.
And what's nice is all the 2-beds are actually vacant right now. So it's not like you have to work and conversate with tenants. It's there's no one in there, so you just get to work and split the units.
Where'd you say this was located again?
Down Toronto. It's in Rosedale.
Okay, so that's a huge value add.
Roseland.
No, we're not Roseland.
Talk about Burlington people. Or
I know. There's Rosedale, Roseland. All the roses.
Good pocket of Toronto.
So good pocket. I mean, if you think about what you're subtracting 1 2-bedroom, which in that area is worth what, like 800, 900, if it was on its own as a condo. I mean, I guess it's not.
Sorry, I thought you were talking rents, and I was
no,
like,
you haven't been to Toronto very often.
What's that worth? What's that worth as a? Like at a trading price. No, just at a trading price.
Well,
a per door trading price.
Let's forget condo price, because I don't think that is super relative. But let's talk per door.
So per door, a 2-bedroom.
You just asked 2 multifamily guys to quote. That's why we were like,
sorry, apologies.
We had no idea.
I shouldn't have asked it that way.
Condos.
I shouldn't have asked it that way. So at a per door pricing, like obviously per door pricing for 2-beds is a little bit more than 1-bed.
Yes.
Yep.
So you're subtracting, say, something worth 500 and adding 2 things worth 400. Is that fair?
Sure.
It's probably not worth 500 maybe. Is that too much?
They're well worth 500.
I was actually having a conversation with our other partner, Zach.
and we were trying to find stabilized apartment product in good areas of Toronto.
Oh,
and
yeah.
we were able to find, it's a little bit all over the place,
Yeah.
but we actually were able to find all the way up to $750 a unit for stabilized, like nice condo grade rental.
The thing
product.
is there's a lot of smart money and strong capital that people will buy in those areas for higher prices, right? Because they're long term. Like we were talking about it on straight to CMHC deals, and like where you start to factor in appreciation, because that's obviously a big play. But if you can go out to Toronto, repatriate your capital, and then sort of hang on, you're in a good spot.
Yeah, and so you're going to be essentially, you're correct, right? You're going to be taking let's call it a 500 unit. You're splitting it now. It's two 400s.
So subtract 5, add 400 times 2. That's 8. So you're up 300 on value.
Yeah, and
Hypothetical, totally out of a hat numbers.
Yeah. And we do have hard numbers on this deal.
Yeah.
For anybody listening that is interested in what we're talking about, whether it's a purchase JV, straight to CMHC, whatever we want to call it, VTB, all the acronyms,
Yes,
right?
A lot of
So this seller's willing to do whatever to get it done.
There's two options. He's got 2 clear paths. So
Correct. And so we're more than happy to send numbers to anybody who wants to go to the link below, and we'll talk about that later. Yeah.
Okay, but high level, what's he willing to do here? So it could be a JV, or
So you can do a straight like disposition. So he's willing
regular,
to sell it.
just buy it.
Hey, somebody comes in, they buy it, permit ready, and you can do the construction.
seller financing or no?
No, I don't.
No
believe so.
VTB available. Okay.
no
And
VTB on this one.
Other option is they partner. So this person or this team has the runway. They have clear
So
understanding.
they can do all the work. They just need somebody to come in and basically fund it.
Correct. So they're going to fund the construction costs, and then they repatriate capital first. So on refinance, they're paid back first, and then the discussion of kind of ownership
Do you
structure.
continue
what that looks
on,
like.
or do you dispose?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's nice. It sort of goes into, do you want to do it on your own? Do you have the knowledge and the know-how, or do you want to go with a team that has a proven track record?
So and
basically at this
it's a
point-
pretty qualified team, right? Like, we're going to keep names out of it, but again, it's not Mickey Mouse. It's
With a track record.
There's definitely a track record there of doing projects very similar to this.
Yeah.
So, again, if somebody's, and we're not here to say, you should JV or you shouldn't JV. Like that's not our job. We actually can't even talk about that legally.
Yeah, as realtors, you're not allowed to sell a JV situation.
So we're just saying, listen, we have the mandate to sell the building.
Yeah.
There's another option here, which is a creative option. If you're comfortable with that person and you want to figure
work
something
out, yeah.
go for it, right? And so
Yeah, it goes back to, I swear we talk about this every time, but like goals. Like, what are you trying? What are you good at? And what do you want to do? And what is your goal? Right? Like, if your goal is to get your hands dirty and you know how to do this and you want to do it, then it makes sense to straight.
You very much have to be an active investor to do that.
Correct.
Like you can't be one of those people who just, you're a dentist full time and you have this like side
spot on.
portfolio.
I was just about to go that route. I was going to be like, listen, either like if you're like the perfect buyer for this would be like a family who's got a little bit of capital, right? They want to own in Toronto.
Yeah.
They're okay being creative. Right.
Yeah,
but they don't, but they don't have the time. Right. Yeah. Maybe it's like you said, a dentist and a lawyer.
They're the ones that would do a JV situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And a deal like that makes sense, right? You have good operators. They know how to do it.
And then you just work it out so that at the end of the day, you guys own the building whole.
Yes.
You get the active partner out.
Yep.
And now you own a beautiful building downtown Toronto. You got a whole bunch of units in there.
Yeah.
You've been able to get in, get out with very little capital.
Yeah.
And you're
owning in Toronto, purpose-built.
That's not a bad
property,
structure, right?
Yeah.
One thing to add, which we left out actually, was there is excess land on this property as well.
Yeah.
I believe the current ownership group was thinking about a garden suite, laneway home, whatever you want to call it. There might be a bigger development play there in the future if you actually want to go through and work that through. But there is excess land abutting a laneway.
Yep.
There is a possibility to add additional units on that piece. But we're selling it as the straight up deal. We're not going to start speculating.
That's
on
bonus land. I like
that's
to look
bonus
at that.
land.
That's
Yeah,
bonus.
it's not
Maybe
built
one day
into
you
the
can do
price.
something with it. I love when you can just acquire a property that has some extra land that maybe could be worth something. You buy enough of those, some of them are going to hit.
Yeah.
Some of them are going to be something that you can
Listen,
actually make much
worst
money
case,
off of.
don't do the garden suite. Do a parking lot.
Yeah.
Cut the grass, put the gravel down. Now you got a laneway. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
You rent it to some neighbors. Parking spot in Toronto is what, $200 a spot?
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah.
A month for something like that. So it's not small potatoes when you're
assuming you can get it through bylaw in terms of requirement, but to the point that you'd never know. Like I know a guy who's been on my podcast a bunch, Kellen. he has a property, a multifamily, that in the backyard of that multifamily, he's putting up another 12 units.
Sure.
Wow. Nice.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
But that's the thing. Like
yeah.
it's time and money, right? How much time, how much money do you want to throw at it?
Yes.
Well, but
Almost
in that
everything's
case-
possible eventually.
But in
right?
that case, there's no burn. It's not a risky development play. He literally owns the property already, and it already cash flows. So he's using the cash flow to pay.
where
for
What
the
city? What city is that?
That's London.
Yeah. So this is another thing is like if you're out too far out, the cost to construct doesn't make sense. When you're in Toronto, if you're spending 500 a unit, 400 a unit, whatever the case may be, the cost to construct starts to really
It starts to
sense.
make more sense because you can justify, especially if you already own that land. Like you
Good
have,
thought.
Yeah.
yeah, 100%. Because for a lot of developers right now, I just saw a stat the other day. Like new developments are way down. Construction workers are being laid off at like an astronomical rate right now.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Like we need more housing stock in Ontario and in Canada, and because of all the economic conditions, it's going the other way.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So if you go and you're purchasing at 150 a unit, let's go extreme, and your cost of construction is going to be 400, it doesn't make sense. You're
You're not going to do
You
it.
go out to Toronto and you're going, well, that absolutely
It
makes
might
sense
all of a sudden, especially if you've already got the land. Now you're just looking at forget all the sunk costs from where I am right now. Does it make sense? And what I've seen with even like garden suites, even in other cities, they're making they're like 1% rule.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you'll be in for 250 to build it, and it should do
Now, do we want to?
2,500 in rent.
Yeah.
Sorry, but do we want to touch on the garden suite?
I love when you get excited. Yes.
The garden
definitely.
suite,
Yeah.
right? It's such a hot thing, such a fun topic. Everybody loves the garden suite, but at least from the people that I know that have done or have looked at executing a garden suite, the bank and the appraisal is the issue every time.
Yeah,
Right?
you're not going to get. It's not going to work for you for residential lending.
You're putting
Right.
400 into a build it.
but they're not going to.
You're not getting 400 out in value.
Nope.
Right.
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 Well, no,
And this is
you
what's
might get it out
stopping a
in
lot of
value,
people.
but the lender is not going to finance it.
Correct.
And now that probably will change over time, but I think commercially lenders will. It's just not going to be at 80%. It's going to be like 75. To
Right. Well,
70.
at least what I keep seeing is people, the appraisers are coming in or the lenders are coming in looking at it and go, well, you've added one unit,
Yes, and that's all it is.
right? You've taken an 8 unit, now it's a 9
Yes.
unit.
Yeah.
Right. You've taken a 10 unit, now
Yes.
it's an 11
But
unit.
you've always got the appraiser that gets it versus the one that doesn't. Like,
But it's the lenders
But this
at
is
the
a
end
story
of
as
the
old
day,
as
right?
time, right? It's like it's going to happen, right? Because there's
Yeah.
going to be more education every time this happens. There's a fight with the appraiser, and then
it
you're
works
just
over
ahead of
time,
the
yeah.
curve, and then there's people who follow suit, right? Like we've got a guy that was buying multis. Now he buys larger homes in Toronto and makes them, splits them up.
into 4.
Into
well, I
4.
remember a few different guys come on my podcast. They were taking those single like 2,000 square foot, 2.5-story homes in Hamilton.
Yeah.
And cutting them into a duplex legally, and then after they closed the permit, making them into 4. And that was like their business model.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
they made them, and this was before like the craziness of the lockdowns.
Yes.
And they were cash flowing 700 to 1,200 every time when they were done, on the refi.
It's like when Canada gets out of their own way and we start allowing people to do things. It's like that's going to allow contractors, construction guys to do stuff, add more units. It's like that's
Well, I
the
wonder
linchpin, right?
how that all works out now because they did those illegally. Like, I wonder if now that they're adding in licensing, if that'll ever come back
just
to
create
bite.
their-
If that will ever come back to bite.
See, I'm being optimistic again. I thought you were like, you did it.
I'm
It's
more
good.
on the optimistic side.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think it'd be an issue. Like that's outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
So when I hear people like come on the podcast and they're doing that, I'm like, wow. Like
I think you might run into some, okay, you got to go through and do some fireproofing.
sure,
But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like, is the city really going to, at least Hamilton, right? Are they going to come back and say, we know we're going to take rental stock
yeah,
off
they're
the
not.
market?
Going to,
Right.
That's
We're
what
gonna
I've
take
always said. Like
20
Yeah.
units from one ownership
Yeah.
off the market.
Just
Well,
make
think
sure
it-
it's safe and you're good. You're not by
Yeah,
the
like-
furnace falling
right.
asleep.
Yeah.
I
Like
get
yeah,
that.
make sure it passes fire code and all
Yeah.
that. I mean, it would be an obvious thing. Like it's not obviously advice from any of us because everybody's got to make their own decisions. But I mean, it's hard to imagine when probably like 50% of the rental stock in Hamilton is probably
Well, that's the
illegal
thing,
by
right?
today's
Yeah.
standards.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see what it would take to get them up to spec. Would it be egress windows? Would it be? And I don't imagine it's going to be kick the tenant out and do the work.
But
It's
you
gonna
could
be,
build-
while the tenant's there. Just
Right.
make sure you do some of this over
Right.
the next.
But you could build all that stuff, like if you're doing that kind of thing. And I know we've gone on a tangent. You could still build it all to code, but it says it doesn't conform with the zoning, and they wouldn't have approved it. And that's what I was seeing happening in Hamilton, is people were doing
Yeah.
stuff that they knew didn't conform. But now look, we're like 3-4 years later, and now the laws are
gonna
coming
do?
into place where they'll allow for.
Yeah.
So
Well, this is
that changes things.
huge tangent. Now we're going into the third level of tangent here. But we were working on a deal with zoning issues, right?
Oh,
It wasn't
gosh.
even zoning issues, but it was just it was opinion issues.
Yes.
Right? Because the zoning,
This is
there was,
every deal in London.
there was actually a piece of line in the zoning that said that it would work. And then there was a piece of line in the zoning that said it wouldn't work. And we went to the city and they say, no comment.
Yeah.
And then we went to the seller and he goes, well, obviously it does work. And then you go to the buyer and he says, well, obviously it doesn't work. So I'm going to pay you less. And then we go to a lawyer and he's like,
We went to
what does the bank want to do?
3 different lawyers, and you're just like
Yeah,
your
but
head
you
is
need
spinning
to.
by the end, and you're going, guys, like, what are we doing?
I was just talking off camera to Jake. Like I was just talking to a lawyer about a certain scenario, and I'm like, Jake, I probably need to ask a couple more lawyers.
Yeah, you do.
Because you're gonna get different advice or different opinions depending on who you ask.
You know what you do? You just transcribe it, put it in ChatGPT, all 3 combos, and be like, what's the conclusion, right? Like, I don't know what to do. But in this particular case, like, it comes down to like, hey, we're going to go to CMHC. So how does CMHC look at it? We went to different people, even financing wise. Like, how does it actually go? So it comes down to the vendor's lawyer says, hey, to CMHC, look, you know, we believe, and the lender's saying, look, we feel it is a 12 unit or we don't. And that's kind of the linchpin. So you have to find the lawyer that's comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's tough.
That's
It's
actually
a lot. And
that's a good tangent just for this episode, like talking about like what is legal,
Mm-hmm.
because I know that I've run into it with the larger stuff. You're just like really the lawyers are just looking, does it conform? Does the current use conform with the zoning?
Yes.
Doesn't mean that they got there legally. Like, because you could have a zone that allows up to 8, but it was only a 3-unit building that they just
Well, what
slapped
is-
4 more onto.
What is the definition of illegal and legal rental? Right. I think that's something we should clear
well, it's
up.
legal non-conforming. Is
You
right.
could have illegal conforming, like it was done illegally, but it conforms with
Meaning
current
you
zoning.
didn't build it to code. At
Or
the
you
time
or
of
you did you
construction,
didn't
or
get
you
the
didn't even get
permission.
permits.
You didn't
You
get
built
permits.
it to code, but you don't have the
Maybe you
permission.
didn't get a permit. Yeah, exactly.
So it's legal, illegally built.
But
How many
conforming.
non-conforming
followers did
legal.
we just lose? So we're doing one in London right now, different deal, and it's 2 6-plexes side by side, but both the zoning is not in place for it actually showing. So the city actually came back, different than our deal, and said we don't recognize the 6th unit in each of these.
Right. I remember you
Now
telling
we're
me
going,
about
well, this is a gong show because the lender obviously isn't going to finance those. So now the owner of it saying, hey, no problem. Get an architect. We can sort this out. And they're actually working with the city in London. And
To
to
get
London's credit, they've been lovely. And they're working.
Really?
Yeah, I know.
Well, London's unique that way because if you're over 4 units, the rental licensing program doesn't apply. So once you get into those larger multis, like what would they even do about those extra units? Like there's no licensing process involved. I mean, it's a weird area, which I find it's fascinating to talk about this and how it's handled, because I feel like a lot of these municipalities, like you talk to one person and then another, and they're not even clear. Like one person tells you no, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Another tells you the
You
other.
keep hunting till you find the person that gives you the right info.
The answer
but-
you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Find the one
but
that
the
says-
problem with the city is they're not going to go out and say, you've
No.
got a 12 unit, right? So
No,
they're-
you got to fight. You got to fight.
It's
for
never
it.
been black and white with the city there, right? Like it's always just like, well, this is what the zoning says.
Yes.
It's like, great, we understand that, but how
It's
many
not
units is it?
helpful.
Yeah.
Right? What are we talking here?
So
at the
this
end
one,
of the
they're actually going through, and so far so good, knock on wood, that they're working with the city to actually have them recognize it.
Because so the zoning does allow for it, but the
zoning
city
allows,
didn't,
but the
didn't
city,
recognize
city
it.
effectively said we see the permit for 5 per, we don't see a 6. So
Yeah,
not
so-
saying you've messed up, but we don't see it.
So then technically the city might want development charges to go from 5 to 6.
Ooh, great question.
That's what I
There you go.
think the
That's a
implication of that
great
is.
point.
So you're going to bring in. So here's
That's a
how I
great
see
point.
that playing out. You're going to bring in an inspector. They're gonna say, okay, make a little hole there. Okay, yeah, I feel comfortable passing this.
Yeah,
But in order to
that's what
get
you're
that
right.
permit,
You're
they're
right.
going to say yes, just pay the extra. And I don't know what the schedule is now for multis and the extra unit. Maybe it's 10 grand for the extra. So maybe they're looking at 20 grand for the 2 extra units.
That's a really valid point.
Something to look at.
And I'm wondering because they've been really good to work with, and now you're
They're
like
gonna
make a couple
scratching your
bucks.
head,
They're
right?
rubbing their hands.
That's not just London; that's all municipalities. But yeah, no,
yeah,
so-
a bunch of hand rubbers.
Well, but I mean, even the owner, right? Like he had to get a like architect. They're having commentary with the city now. The dev fees, to your point, right? So it's not a cheap endeavor, and all this to really the heart of it is. We just want to be able to finance those units.
Well,
Right.
it's-
Well,
all
I mean,
we're
so
trying
the
to
seller probably
accomplish.
looks at that and just says, well, if they're having this issue, then any other buyer's going to have the same issue. So we might as well just make it work.
And that's that's usually the biggest concern for buyers, right? Is, hey, I don't want the headache when I go to sell, and I need to make sure that when I go
Yes.
for financing, they're going to look at it as what I'm paying for,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Which really shows like when you're buying a property, a multifamily, we need to be very specific on how we're writing the contract up, what you're buying. You have to be clear. There's a lot of these nuances in the APS that people oversight, and it happens. And then all of a sudden you bought a 12 unit that's actually a 10. Like that's a very big
and
deal.
are you writing it that it's legally recognized versus it legally conforms?
Correct.
Yeah.
So you're saying legally recognized?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And we even put it in title search. Like I need specific number of units.
Yeah, Dave is very specific about that. Where
I'm
in the
obsessive.
title search box, you'll actually put the unit count,
Yes.
which I like, and I've been
You like
doing
if you're
that.
the buyer.
I've been doing that now.
Yeah.
But it's
This is why, I mean, for people watching, like, and obviously these guys, like I think highly of them, but you got to work with people who know, because if you worked with, say, like a res agent that was taking on a multifamily, they're just not going to think like that. Yeah.
You have to respect the path you're in. Like you asked us about the condos. Honestly, it's not my world. I don't know. I can speculate. But
and it's the same thing. Someone came to me and said, "Hey, do you want to sell my residential house?" And it's like, no, but we have people for that.
Have people
right?
for that. Yeah.
Would you sell your own house?
I am not selling my own house.
Oh,
I am selling my house right now. I'm not,
I didn't just follow you on purpose there.
I have a realtor selling my house,
great
a
example.
residential focused realtor. And
why are you doing that?
well, I was just going to say, like, she's been calling me, like asking me things and saying how she's negotiating this and that. I'm like, I have no idea.
Right.
Or even just when she came in, it was, some movers.
Yes.
They did staging. They did, all of it. And I'm like, if Dave came to me today and was like, "Hey, Jake, I need a mover," like, I don't think I could name one for you. Now, because I know the guy that did my house, but like prior to that, I've been like, call two guys in a truck. Like, I don't know what to tell
honestly.
you.
It's the same with people that do financing, right? You have your residential guys and you have your
specialized
multifamily
guys.
and
You need
it's
to
like,
work with the guys that are specialized.
Yeah. And again, tangent, but real estate agent or lawyers, excuse me. Like, you've got the person who does family law and estate law that also does real estate law. It's like, I think
you don't want them.
You want the expert.
Well, yeah, and that's my thing with realtors, and it's a bit of I wouldn't say a pet peeve, but it's something with realtors. No, realtors. Yeah. Sorry, I'm jumping back. Is when realtors come to you and you're like, "Oh, like, what asset class do you sell?" And they're like, "Oh, a little bit of everything."
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean a little bit of everything? And they're like, "No, yeah, like literally a little." So I'm like, "So you're not great at selling anything, then," is what I hear. Right? That's what I hear. You're saying I sell everything. I hear it. Okay.
We're doing an amendment right now and just talking about the wording, right? And it's like we're drafting it. Now we're getting into the weeds, and at some point it's going, "Hey, let's get your lawyer to have a look," right? Because again, we're good, but we're not lawyers, right? So the wording
you
of
can
the
come up with
APS
the ideas, then you need the
sure. When it gets to
lawyer
the you have your kind of generals, but when you get into, we love creative deals. When you get in the nuances, you got to make sure that the pros check that box.
And for the public and the investors and everybody, just like ask that question to your realtor. Or you don't have to work with us, but I'm just saying, ask that question when you're talking to realtors. Say, what do you specialize in? Or what do you focus on? You don't have to say specialize or whatever, but it's a valid question, right? And feel free to question that. And if they do say a little bit of everything, question it some more, right?
Yeah.
Because if someone asks me what I do, I'm going to say multifamily development, right? And that could mean, multifamily sales and development. So that could mean multifamily development, right? Because it is the same thing. Or resale multifamily buildings. But that's about it. Like you don't see me doing too much industrial or anything like that.
A little bit of commercial mixed use.
Oh, well, commercial mixed use, like again, that falls under multifamily in my my mind, right? But
good clarification though. But you kind of blanket that. Yeah.
Okay, so to wrap this one up, man, we started in one place, which I actually just enjoy this for a guy who's done like the podcast and then this show, podcast for over 5 years, this show for about a year and a half now. Like, I just like fresh. This is fresh. So I like
that was a fun, this has actually been a really good episode.
So to put a bow on it, we started with talking about creative deal structure, going into stuff with the option to JV and how that might look. We didn't really get into the weeds of what that might look like, but we kind of touched on that. And then we went into talking about the legalities of units and
garden suites
and construction costs. And it was fun. It's a good discussion. Like we're covering a lot of different really important topics, and they're coming up organically, which it's just like getting inside the mind of people who talk about this stuff and think about it all day, which I think is really helpful.
And the fun thing is, like, when we do the REI meetups and stuff like that, like these are the conversations we have there. Right? This is the conversation I love having. Like, it's just we riff off different ideas. You go down a rabbit hole, you come out, you go back into something else.
Yeah, you could go here, you could go there.
I think that is
great conversation.
That is what makes it so fun. Because you're constantly in evolution and learning, right? And you're like around other people like-minded, and you're just taking stuff, constantly evolving.
Yeah.
It's nice.
All right. we're gonna do more of these. We're already well into this one, so we'll wrap it up now. If you want to work with these guys, or you want to touch base with them and see how they might be able to help you, make sure you click the link below the video and then opt in.
Link below. As I said at the beginning of the call, like this is an active beginning of the podcast. This is an active listing. We have other downtown Toronto active listings. We have active listings in Hamilton, Kitchener, Cambridge, Waterloo, all over. So really, I ask anybody that's curious, wants to know more, right? If you've been watching a few of these to learn, feel free to reach out. We can also educate you on these things. Like that's part of what we do. So don't feel afraid to hit the button, right?
Yeah. It's
a new link. You're going to go through our new system. But we want to work with you guys, and for sellers too, right? If you're sitting there with a property and you're going, I don't know if this is legal, right? I want to sell it, but am I going to get stuck in what we're talking about? Call us. Like we can help work through that. Right?
Yeah.
I love those.
Was I know you were mentioning that you were working with a couple of people from the show that had come in, and like the level of understanding, because they had been going through and listening to Jake talk about all this stuff for so long. Like they understand, they already know where it's so,
because we do a lot of like education. So even people that we kind of figure out where you are in your journey and tailor it to where you need. So most of the time, if you're new to us, we're just going to assume you haven't done a lot of this. And when we start getting into the weeds with people, they're like, wow, they are very far ahead.
Yeah, if they're asking questions based on stuff we've covered on the episodes, which that's awesome. It just means that the understanding's there. You're way closer to being able to do a deal if you already understand like the nuts and bolts of stuff.
Yeah, and even if you're newer to it, like we'll help you through each stage of the process. So you don't have to be that far along, but kudos to the listeners.
Yeah, I'm just saying, check out these episodes. We got like 80 some odd now, and probably at least more than 3/4 of those with Jake talking about stuff, and now Dave coming on the show. So lots of good value there. Anyways, guys, if you're enjoying this, please make sure you show the channel some love. We'll see you again next week.